The offseason is upon the Dallas Cowboys, and it's time to address the elephant in the room. It's time to address the Dez Bryant contract situation heading into the 2018 NFL season. And before I even get going on this one, I have to let everybody know up front, I am far from a Dez Bryant hater. As a matter of fact, I consider myself a big Dez Bryant fan, and I have been for a real long time. I mean, I love the dude's passion. I think he's a real good guy. I think he's a good teammate. I love throwing up the X after a big play just as much as anybody out there in Cowboys Nation. But after going over some of these contract details, I'm seeing this is quickly becoming a big problem for the Dallas Cowboys. So, Dez, to quote Michael Corleone from The Godfather, it's not personal, Sonny. It's strictly business. So before I break down the contract, I want to give a little background information. Of course, most of you guys know Dez Bryant was drafted in the first round of 2010, and he signed a rookie deal on July 22nd of that same year. He signed a 5-year, $11.8 million contract. And as you probably noticed or know already, Dez definitely outperformed his rookie deal. I mean, Dez balled out for his first 5 seasons. And so I was very happy for Dez when 5 years later, on July 15th, 2015, he's signing his 5-year, $70 million contract. Dez got paid, baby. And I was proud, man. I was happy to see it because, like I mentioned earlier, Dez deserved it. He was that big playmaking threat at the wideout position that we needed on that offense. Unfortunately, ever since he signed that deal, Dez has been not just in a steady, but steep decline. Now, whether you want to blame injuries, whether you want to blame chemistry with the new quarterback, or coaching schemes, the bottom line is Dez's production has not been commensurate with his salary, and it's becoming a big-time problem for the Dallas Cowboys. So, let's get into these contract details for 2018 with Dez Bryant. First thing I noticed was Dez Bryant in 2018 will be the third highest paid player at the wide receiver position. At this point, I don't think anybody in their right mind could justify putting Dez Bryant at the top 3 or top 5. As a matter of fact, I think most analysts have Dez right now outside of their top 20. So to pay him top 3 money is quite a stretch if you ask me. He's also going to be the second highest paid player on the Cowboys roster next season, behind Tyron Smith, who I believe checks in with a cap number of $17.5 million. Dez will also be the number 31 highest paid player in 2018. He's definitely not a top 50 player going into 2018. So like I said, lots of stretches in the contract. Dez is actually scheduled to count and make $16.5 million for the Cowboys, from the Cowboys, I should say, next season. Now, how this works out is Dez is guaranteed $4 million for 2018, whether he's cut, whether he's traded, whether he plays, whether he falls on his face, or whether he balls out. He's guaranteed the $4 million, even if he's not on the team. However, he's also gets a base salary of $12.5 million throughout the 2018 season, which, you add those two figures up, gives you the $16.5 million cap hit that Dez Bryant counts against the salary cap in 2018. He has a similar number in 2019, same thing, another $4 million guaranteed, and another base salary of $12.5. Again, $16.5 million per year. So at this point, Dez Bryant for the next 2 years will cost the Cowboys $25 million if he plays out this contract. Dez is not worth the $25 million, not by a long shot. However, we have to look at the two options. If you cut Dez as a post-June 1 cut, he will actually count $8 million against the cap, $4 million in 2018 and $4 million in 2019, but the Cowboys will save $12.5 million for 2018 and 19. So, I hate to say it, but we need to start discussing the possible options for Dez Bryant. now that we got the Dez Bryant contract details out of the way, let's focus a little bit more on the Dallas Cowboys salary cap going into 2018. Now, as I mentioned in the previous segment, Dez Bryant is scheduled to count $16.5 million against the 2018 salary cap for the Cowboys. Now, this can be problematic because although the Cowboys have about almost little over $18 million in cap space going into 2018, remember, they still have to sign any unrestricted free agents, restricted free agents, the entire 2018 draft class, and I do believe the Cowboys have a lot of picks. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but they have plenty of draft picks to sign this season, so that all has to come from that almost $19 million there. And on top of that, there's something called dead money, which again, if the Cowboys did cut Dez, there would be $4 million worth of dead money against the 2018 cap. Now, dead money basically means, in layman's term, the money you're paying a player not to be on the team. So you would pay Dez Bryant $4 million in 2018 and $4 million in 2019 not to be on the team. Now, on top of that, it's problematic to cut Dez Bryant because Tony Romo is currently set to count $8.9 million against the 2018 salary cap. So Tony is making $9 million next season not to play, to be up in the booth on CBS. Another bad deal, although it's not as big of a cap number, was the signing of Cedric Thornton. He's scheduled to count $2.5 million against the 2018 cap. No bueno there. Cedric Thornton was a bad signing. He never really got anything going during his tenure with the Cowboys. And another bad signing, you got Nolan Carroll scheduled to count $2 million against the 2018 cap, and I think Nolan Carroll lasted all about 2 games, so that's all you got out of that guy. So bad deals. You have dead money already counting it against the cap, so you can't be too quick to pull the trigger on just straight out cutting Dez Bryant because you're going to add another $4 million to dead money. So you're going to be paying close to $16, $18 million a year in worth of contracts to players that aren't even playing for the team that season. So no good. But I do want to talk about some of the possible solutions going into 2018 for Dez Bryant. Now, me personally, I think the win-win is probably the simplest of all. I think Dez has to take a slight pay cut. I think he has to reduce his base salary and try to make some of that back in incentives. I don't see any other thing working out, at least for the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm sorry to say, but I think if he didn't agree to any type of base salary reduction, and you know, you can't ask too much because the Cowboys don't have the kind of leverage to say, Dez, you know, we're going to cut your base salary in half. That ain't going to happen because Dez knows he's going to get $8 million from the Cowboys that he has coming to him guaranteed, and he can probably sign with another team for $8 or $9 million. So he can make his money back with another team on top of the money he's going to get from the Cowboys. So the Cowboys don't have as much leverage as most fans, you know, would like to think. But still, the Cowboys have some leverage. Dez is in decline. I think even Dez Bryant would acknowledge he's not happy with the kind of production that he's getting. But up next, in the next segment, I want to talk about a wacky idea I read from Patrick Walker. He's a writer for Cowboys 24/7, and he mentioned and suggested that Dez Bryant get a contract extension. Now again, this is nothing personal, it's strictly business, but I don't understand how that logically makes any sense. So coming up next, I'm going to break down that possibility, the third option that, you know, to me just sounds straight up insane, but we're going to go over it. We're going to cover those details here and talk a little bit about the third option. So 1 being cut Dez, 2 being let him play it out, and 3 being, well, signing him to an extension. We'll talk more about that next. So, getting back to that article I mentioned in the previous segment, talking about the article from Patrick Walker from 24/7 Sports, he actually writes an article suggesting that they signed Dez Bryant to a 2 to 3 year extension, basically extending him to about 2021, 2022, when he'll be 33, 34 years old, and saying it's a perfect time for him to call it a career and retire. Now, the problem with that is he's saying that, you're going to throw more years because you're able to spread out the cap hit. Now, the reason why Dez Bryant would count $4 million against the cap for 2018 and 2019 is because within the deal, Dez is still guaranteed $8 million, so they get to spread that out through each year of the deal. So in turn, the more years that Dez Bryant has on the deal, the smaller the cap hit will be throughout those years because you'll have more years to spread it out. So he's suggesting by extending Dez Bryant a couple of years, you're going to be able to get that cap hit down even further, say 2 years down the line. However, Dez Bryant's been in decline since 2015. We are already 3 years too late on that. As a matter of fact, back in 2017 and this last season, Dez counted $17 million against the cap. And for what? I mean, this guy isn't even a legit number one wide receiver, or at least wasn't in 2017. And he counted $17 million. So Dez has got his money already for a lack of production. So I think the last thing you need to do is sign him up to try to, get your cap number down if you cut him. Right now, the Cowboys are still saving more money than he's worth at this point. You can sign a wide receiver for less than $8.5 million, which is what you'll be saving per year if we should cut Dez Bryant in 2018, 2019. So I don't understand that. But even more than I don't understand the logic from extending Dez was the basis for the extension. He goes on to state that Dak and Dez are they're gonna get the coaches are gonna change the scheme up, and if they have big years, you want to prevent a contract battle between Dak and the Cowboys and Dez and the Cowboys, because they'll both be free agents heading into 2019. So if they have a big 2018 season, you're gonna have to pay both of them. So why not extend him now? I hate to say this, man, but I don't know what Dez Bryant you've been watching. Even if Dez does, quote unquote, bounce back, this offense is going to lean heavily on the offensive line, Ezekiel Elliott, in the running game. Dez Bryant is not going to see the kind of numbers he saw when Tony Romo was running the ship as the QB under center for Dallas. Dak Prescott and Dez, no matter whose fault or who you want to blame, they don't have that connection that Romo and Dez have. In fact, just Dak and Dez just don't mesh. Their styles don't mesh. Dak likes to throw to an open man. He does not like to throw the 50-50 balls. You can tell throughout the course of the season that Dak was losing confidence in Dez. And then, they tried to force the ball. He tried to force the ball to Dez to kind of get Dez going because Zeke wasn't there. And he ended up turning the ball over way too much. So I don't see where, Dez is going to have this omega season and you're going to have to end up paying him more than you're already overpaying the guy. So I just think that was a crazy, crazy idea. I just thought it was funny that he thought that was a smart idea, and mentioned that just cutting Dez is the simple, just your average sports fan would be calling for that. But when you really look at it, simple is often the best idea. At this point, I am not opposed to cutting Dez Bryant. Now, I more than willingly admit that, it's going to be tough, because why not play with Dez one more year? If you can manage this cap for 2018 and sign your free agents, it might be worth giving Dez a shot and then cutting him the following season. But at this point, no way do I give Dez a contract extension, and in no way am I holding my breath for Dez Bryant to return to form. Not in this lifetime. So to wrap up this Dez Bryant contract discussion heading into 2018, just a few things I want to go over once again. The Dez to Dak connection, it's not where it needs to be. They need to get it together in training camp, and they need to get it going. That passing game needs to be able to complement that running game if the Cowboys are going to get back into the playoffs, and even more importantly, the Cowboys Nation have some playoff success. That's what we really want. We want a Super Bowl. The connection, it's just not there. So, in my opinion, an extension is crazy. I think the suggestion is just kind of a Skip Bayless special, a shock jock, get clicks, because, number one, even if Dez has a good year, maybe if he curbs the drops, he led the league in drops last season. That's not good. He had a lot of turnovers. He was careless with the ball. That's not good. He gets frustrated. You can take him out of a game mentally. That's not good. But even after all that being said, this is a running offense. The money's going to be in the offensive line and with Ezekiel Elliott going forward. So no reason to live in fear of having to pay Dez a third contract. That ain't happening. You know what? If he does, I'd probably end up having to pay Dez Bryant because I don't think anybody else in the league is going to be paying Dez Bryant. So I think that's just crazy. Your options going forward are to let Dez play it out in 2018, you know, pay the man his 16.5, see if he give him one last chance, see if he can, you know, back it up, see if he can, you know, establish a connection with Dak Prescott and see if you can start to begin to get your money's worth. But in my opinion, I think the best thing to do was, I guess, maybe keep him on the roster for 2018. But I think you have to cover your bets here. I think you're going to need to draft a wide receiver, preferably a speed receiver that's going to force the defense to have to cover the entire field, because that's something the Cowboys don't have on offense currently. They have a lot of good players, a lot of solid players, but they don't have a fast, explosive player that's going to take the top off of defense. So draft, you know, number one wide receiver. So if Dez doesn't pick it up in 2018, you can go ahead and cut him in 2019 and go forward with some young wide receivers, much like the Cowboys did to the defensive backfield in the last draft. You know, they had some high paid, you know, free agents, and they let them go and replaced them with rookies. And yeah, there was some growing pains, but if you want to keep Dez here for another year just in case while those rookies go through growing pains, hey, I'm all for it. In fact, that's probably the most logical suggestion. You know, just make sure that you work the cap in other ways around Dez Bryant for 2018 so you can handle business in 2019. But what do you guys think out there? Wrapping it all up, I mean, it's definitely a polarizing subject, and there is no clear-cut right or wrong answer. It's controversial for a reason, because a lot of these options, whether you are for cutting him or whether you are for keeping him, they all make sense. Hey, even the contract extension makes sense on some levels, but for the most part, I just didn't see it. But what do you guys think? Go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know if you think Dez needs to be on the team for that price, or what you would do if you were the GM. Put your GM cap on. Let's talk some Cowboys offseason, and specifically, let's talk some Dez Bryant contract, details going forward. So, keep it locked in here to Say What You Like, guys. I will be doing specials throughout the off seasons, focusing on the unrestricted free agents, the restricted free agents. You know, we got to talk about Tank Lawrence. We got to talk about David Irving. We got to talk about some of the progression of the rookies. We're going to be doing a lot during the off season, covering the Super Bowl too. Be talking about that, of course. And, I also want to get back to doing Gridiron Fights, the podcast where we were pitting two commentators against each other, taking the sides of two players in a great rivalry. Check out the Troy Aikman versus Steve Young that we've done. That was a fun one to do, but we want to get back to that in the off season. So keep it here on Say What You Like, guys. Peace out.